Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is high noon, and today is Wednesday, March 13, 2013, and we have scheduled a special meeting of the commissioners, which is scheduled for noon. All three commissioners are present, along with Grant Luther, our county administrator, and Jean Young, who is our clerk. Again, because this is a public meeting and a meeting of the commissioners, everything at this meeting is being recorded. It's my understanding that people's voices can be picked up within about 3 or 4 rows back, so if anyone has any comments or input for us, we'll probably ask you to move up towards the first third of the room in order to make comments in order that they can be recorded. Again, Commissioner Creighton is with me to my right, and Commissioner Regula to my left. I also wanted to introduce 2 people. One is Brant Luther. I think most of you know Brant, but Brant is our new county administrator. Brant started on March 1, February 25. Mike Hankey left on March 1, and as of today, Mike is somewhere in Hilton Head. Don't feel too sorry for Mike. Anyways, Brant is the new guy, and any issues associated with this budget or these appropriations or any other issues involving county government, Brant is the first contact person to see. The second person, while I have everybody together, is to introduce one other person, and this is another new employee of county government, and that is Thomas McMillan. Tom, you want to stand? Tom is also known to us as Mac. Mac has been with us approximately, 30 days? He's our new facilities manager. He replaced Gary Rucci, who retired after 40-plus years in service. Mac comes with a broad variety of background, but most significantly, from my perspective, he is a full retiree from the military service, and he was a sergeant major in the United States Army. And he brings to this job the discipline and the enthusiasm that you would think that a sergeant major would bring. We have been overwhelmingly impressed with the energy that he's displayed. He's gotten around and looking at every building. He's providing and building up a data bank of repairs and other issues, capital and otherwise, that are needed in each and every building. And we have him out there and coordinating with everybody in each and every building. It's not necessarily his desire over his job to take over certain functions that are performed, for example, by certain parts of the common peace corps with regard to their building, or the same thing in other buildings. But again, he will coordinate the larger repairs and larger maintenance issues. So if you have an issue, with parking, by the way, he's also the guy to see. And I don't know what other areas do you have. Want to say a word or two now?
Well, like Commissioner said, I retired military. I did some civil work as well. I was a property manager for Boy Scouts of America in Hawaii. I know that's rough. 5 camps and 4 service centers on 3 islands, so I got to travel a lot. I had a rough career in the Army too. I did 5 tours in Hawaii. Military intelligence guy, so I bring a lot of security knowledge. I bring a lot of being a sergeant major. I ran brigades of 2,400 people, shipped airplanes and tanks all over the world. So I know a lot about logistics and supplies and stuff like that. Yeah, we're expanding the job a little bit. We're not just building to the ground. That's why we're trying to start a new title, facilities, and it encompasses all 12 buildings and all the leased properties. And there's a lot of points of contact I haven't met yet. If I haven't got around to you, I apologize. There's a lot to it. There's a lot more than they told me when I interviewed. But parking seems to be the beast that's chewing at my heels right now. We are getting through it. Just be patient. And I think we're just about over the hump on that one. But anything at all that you may see or need in any of those issues, especially any repairs or, I don't care, nuts and bolts to carpet to roofs, please let me know. And I do have a built-up list, like the Commissioner said already, of things that need to be fixed. And we're going to set up a phasing project to start those. And so I just need to know what everybody's concerns and interests are, and I may refer that. But it's nice to meet everyone.
And Mac challenges anybody and any of your employees to beat him in the number of push-ups that he can do. He knocks out 50 for me every morning. Also wanted to thank, briefly again, I wanted to thank Brant, I wanted to thank Mike Hankey, who did a lot of work on this budget, and Rick Flory. This really the budget that we put together today, by the way, is a summation of probably certainly consistent 2 to 3 months worth of work on Rick's part and a lot of other work on their parts. Just briefly want to review with you what you received today so that everybody knows what they have in front of them. Page 1 of this document is the Certificate of Resources. It's a comparative document comparing 2011, 2012, and 2013. The county auditor is going to explain this to us in more detail. Page 2 is actually just the combined appropriations, and this is the document you're probably most interested in. This is the combined general fund and JSST. That is the Justice Services Sales Tax funds and the appropriation from those funds for 2013. Page 3, and again, this is more of interest, but one of the larger items of our appropriations is Department 35. It is the largest appropriation, other than the sheriff, of probably $10 million in 2013. But Department 35, this is a list of where Department 35 items go. And these are mandated, for the large part, $9 million of that is mandated in contractual services that we're required to pay, including $4 million, for example, to McJazz. And page 4 then is a list of capital appropriations, which are also part of this budget. We wanted to break those out separately. The other large package that you received then when you came in is a series of letters or recommendations or explanations to each office and department. These explain the rationale behind the appropriation given to each office. It's something new that we're doing this year. We would hope to continue with each year hereafter, and it's going to provide a track for us and for you year to year as to why we did something in the previous year and essentially what we promised to do in the following years to some extent. And again, for logistical ease, even though only one page in this document may be applicable to your particular office, we've given everybody a packet of everyone's. These documents, again, together are the recommended 2013 appropriations of the General Fund and Justice Services Sales Tax Fund. To clarify, they do not appropriate special funds, which may exist within various offices, and they do not appropriate enterprise funds or special levy funds. 2013 is the first year for a full appropriation since the criminal justice sales tax was passed in November 2011. In 2012, as we all know, we received only 6 months sales tax, and therefore 2012 as well as 2011 saw cuts in everybody's offices, including criminal justice. And in 2012, the only office that didn't take a significant cut was the sheriff, because in 2012 we were working to, again, increase and open up the capacity of the jail beds. In 2013, and this is our basic philosophy to putting together this budget, we are restoring criminal justice to levels of service which existed immediately prior to the 2011 cuts. The 2013 appropriation funds the hiring of 74.5 part-time person, new or replacement employees, 64.5 of whom are in the criminal justice system. So 84% of the new hires or the replacement hires that are contained in this budget are in criminal justice. For 2013, and again, this is a quick summary of these documents, revenues plus carryover total $61.7 million. Of that, $55.1 million is being appropriated for operational expenses of county government, and another $1.07 million, or about $7 million, is being appropriated for capital needs. The remaining $5.5 million is earmarked for 2013 or future capital projects, which we will discuss below. The 2013 appropriation contains a 27th pay, which everyone is aware of. The 27th pay is an aberration, a regularly recurring aberration, and it occurs about approximately every 11 years. In 2013, that 27th pay cost us in the general fund and in the Justice Services Fund $1.06 million. If you pull out this extraordinary expense from the 2013 operational budget, and I've already pulled out the capital The operational budget is $54.08 million, which is actually $3.2 million less than the 2010 operational budget. This budget therefore balances both promises that I think that the commissioners as well as all elected officials made to the public when we ran the sales tax campaign in 2011. We promised to restore criminal justice services. We also promised to prudently manage county government finances. Of course, we again take the time today to thank the public for their support and passage of the sales tax. First step in this process then is to ask the auditor, Mr. Alan Harrell, to take us through page 1 and again indicate to you the sources of 2013 revenues, your certificate of resources, and perhaps point out some of the changes that exist between that and the 2012 numbers.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. As Mr. Bernabei said, we're going to look at the single page sheet on the top of the smaller package that you have there. We break the revenue that we receive into some broad categories, and I'll just kind of go through them line by line and how they shake out here. The first is taxes. We collect taxes for cigarette and motor vehicle, things of activity that we have. The next big line item is the real property tax that we receive. You'll note that this is down significantly from the previous year, from about $13.67 million to $12.5 million, and this is largely the result of the reappraisal. The county just gets a fixed percentage of the revenue that comes in from property tax, and so it directly relates to the value. We lost about $1.5 billion in value as part of the last reappraisal, so that number is down accordingly. The next line item we have there is the sales and use tax. We had received just over $12 million for the 6 months that we collected it last year. Our certificate last year had been $11 million. We received 12.36. We saw some nice general economic trends. Certainly as we got into the second half of the year, consumer spending was quite good. We watched that very closely. Coupled with our relationship to where the shale oil and gas play is too. If you look at the counties on this half of the state, they're tending to do better than counties where this isn't in play. Doug Thorne and those that work the budget all the time would say 0.5% on average through the history of our county generates about $22 million. That has usually been our plug number for sales tax receipts, $22 million. Given the trends that we saw, we did move that up to $22.5 million for this year. And again, we'll collect that tax for the full year as opposed to last year when we just collected half of that. The next set here are charges for services. These are the activity fees that many of the departments generate for the general fund every day, be it the clerk's office, the recorder's office, my office, the treasurer and my office combined for settlement fees. Those are directly related to taxes. So auditor and treasurer settlement fees, those are related to taxes. The clerk fees, again, activity. Conveyance fees, we had a couple aberrations, a couple of really big sales that happened last year that helped boost that number up. Those are brought down to more historic levels. Indirect costs, those are the Maximus charges that come back to the general fund that many of you end up getting charged for each year. Again, microfilm and copy sales, recorder fees, that's the activity of recording documents every day. You can see relative, we were at about $10.6 million in revenue last year. We're only at 8.2 this year, or 8.9, I'm sorry, 8.9 million this year. Again, most of that's the drop in the conveyance fees. That's something that's very difficult to budget for. We just don't know what the real estate activity is. But you can see it's still up over where we had ended 2011. So what we needed to be a little conservative in bringing that back down. Fines and forfeitures runs pretty consistent every year. The next one I'll spend a few minutes on is the intergovernmental account. Local government and revenue assistance. This is the county share of the undivided local government funds that come directly from the state back to us. Just for point of reference, in 2007, this was $6.2 million. You can see in 11 it was 5.4, and our projections are 2.9 million for this year. That we're going to hold that number for right now. That may go up or down depending on what happens to the state budget. So this is how our projections would carry out for the year. Depending what the legislature and the governor do to the state budget, that could change positive or negative. Probably won't be too big of an impact. It's usually the last quarter of the year that we feel that we would get additional revenue, or we may take an additional hit to that. But for all intents and purposes, we feel good about that, and hopefully we'll even see that go up. Casino revenue, our estimates are $1.8 million. To give a little history on this, when the casino legislation was passed a few years ago, the projections first given to our county were $5.4 million. Last summer, they came out and said we should expect, in August of last year, they came out with projections that said we should receive $2.8 million for this year. And when we sat down and looked at that, we scratched our heads and said, we're a little bit nervous on that. That gets you the $1.8 million. With 3 casinos open, just so you know, if you multiply by 4, we get 4 checks a year for the casino. If you took what we got in January and we got that same amount each of the rest of the year, you'll be at the $1.8 million. That's only with 3 casinos open. So you'd see, even with that one more coming on board, we'd have a long way to go to the projections that the state had given us last year. So we continue to watch that with interest, and I spend just the extra minute on that and saying this isn't the panacea that everybody had expected it to be. And moreover, if you just take the $1.8 million on top of the 2.9, we're still nowhere close to the $6.2 million we had several years ago in local government funds. Deposit and the rollbacks, that's money we receive back from the state for people who are on homestead exemption and indigent defense, but among other things. That correlates somewhat to reappraisal. So there's more pressure on that, not only due to some state funding changes, but because reappraisal went down, we're going to see some pressure on that number as well. Investment income, $1 million. We've been at $900,000 projection last year, ended up the year at 1.15. We moved it up to $1 million this year, though we continue to see downward pressure on rates. We were just talking about it yesterday at the investment advisory meeting, and Mike in my office had brought up today, it just continues to push us down and down. We used to count on over $5 million a year in investment income. And our cash portfolio really hasn't changed over time. We have about the same amount of cash that we manage on behalf of all the entities in the county, and it's down, $4.5 million from where we were 5-6 years ago. Very significant from the market pressure. The last category here, just in the other revenue that we have, miscellaneous, that's last year that accounted for the balance of the Ziegler settlement. A few other things that come in through the year, reimbursements, often for election expenses. It just kind of depends on that. Many of these are very unpredictable. We just never know what's going to happen or the timing of when they're going to hit. Transfers in, we had done a whole lot of cleaning up of accounts. We manage over 600 separate accounts on the county's balance sheet. Several of these are projects that have been completed years ago. They are taxes that were supposed to go through that people have overpaid. We haven't been able to track them down. They're supposed to come back into the general fund. Those haven't been reconciled in a while, so we spent a lot of time reconciling them last year. We have a little bit of work to do this year. That's why you still see $1 million in that category. There's still a few dollars that we'll continue to bring in through that, but again, that's a pretty significant drop, about $2.5 million in just kind of extra money that came in through cleanup of accounts, through Ziegler settlement, through just reimbursements that, again, it's based a lot on timing. That said, even with all this money we have coming in, $11 or $12 million more in the sales tax, with all the other changes that we outlined here, we're still only about $4 million more than we had last year to spend than the budget that the commissioners passed last year. So I appreciate the chance to go through this sheet. I'll take any questions that anybody has on this. We do discuss this sheet in this format every month at our monthly finance meeting, which is held on the second Tuesday of every month in the commissioner's office. So we go through this in detail each time. So. Okay. Any questions?
Any questions for Alan on the revenue side of this?
Okay. Thank you.
On page 2 of this document, then, and this is probably the important document for you, the appropriations for each office are contained on the far right-hand column. So these are the numbers that you probably want to look at. In conjunction with that, then, is the packet of letters or rationale statements contained at the back, and there is one for every office and or department. Please note, and it's important to note, that at this point, these are recommendations only. The commissioners will not formally adopt these appropriations until next Wednesday, March 20th. This provides everyone an opportunity to review the details of their appropriations and to proffer any corrections or changes. We ask that any comments or changes be submitted to County Administrator Grant Luther not later than the close of business this Friday afternoon, in order that we can then put everything together and put the complete appropriation documents, which are somewhat more complex than this document, together for next Wednesday's meeting. I'm not going to review every office's appropriation. The information for each office, again, is contained in the packet. I do want to discuss briefly, though, 2 offices, which again indicates the emphasis of this budget. The first is the sheriff and the jail. The sheriff's appropriations in 2011, if you will note on this, that's why we put multiple columns out, were $13.8 million. That's when he laid off then 41 employees at that time and closed the jail down from 500 beds to 300. And without passing the sales tax, we were going much lower. In 2012, with 6 months of sales tax receipts, again, everybody else took a reduction, but in order to try to attempt to open up the jail to that higher capacity, which again we promised in the sales tax campaign, we had appropriated $15.995 million to the sheriff. Unfortunately, he was unable to hire as planned for a variety of reasons, and in fact actually returned to us $0.428 million at the end of last year, which becomes part of the carryover into this year. Both Sheriff Swanson made a budget presentation to us while he was acting sheriff, and then Sheriff Meyer reviewed this budget appointment after budget request after his appointment. And they have requested funds to hire an additional 45 personnel, corrections officers, deputies, and administrative personnel. This budget funds those hires. In 2013, the sheriff's appropriation is $17.9 million. In the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutors had similar issues and problems, John, I believe, laid off 14 employees as a result of the projections of sales tax returns going into 2011. They were not restored last year. His office took a cut last year along with all the other criminal justice offices and other offices. This appropriation again restores those 14 positions in 2013. There are also other additional restorations of employees in a variety of other offices in the Common Police Board and in several other offices. I'm not going to detail those, although it's all detailed in your individual rationales. I do want to emphasize one thing about this budget, and that is the 2013 budget does not fund all 45 employees in the sheriff's office or all 14 employees in the prosecutor's office for a full year. And that's simply because we're passing the budget in March. So these hires haven't occurred up until now, and in many instances in the sheriff's office where it will take time for him to hire, and probably in John's office also, there's going to be a scaling in of those employees in the course of the year. So we have appropriated funds for 2013 on a scaled and scheduled type of basis. What that means, though, is that in 2014, when we fully fund all of these positions for the full year, that means that certain offices' budgets who are in similar situations are going to go up automatically next year. I think the sheriff's probably going to go up from $17.9 million, probably to closer to $19.1. John's probably going to go up, the prosecutor's probably going to go closer from $3.3 million to $3.6 million. And that's without any new hiring in 2014, no pay raises in 2014. That's just fulfilling the full cost of those employees for a full year. In 2013, I think it's important we talk about this. The appropriation contains pay increases, and we have established these at 2%. Many or most county employees have not had pay raises for 3 to 4 years because of the economy, and because of county finances. And at the same time, the employee's share of health care costs have increased. Some proposed budgets from officials include pay raises greater than 2%. We commissioners are cognizant of the concerns of the elected officials who ask for more, and we're also cognizant of the sacrifices that our employees have made. At the same time, and again, this goes back to the balancing act of what we promised, I think, when we put the sales tax campaign out there, we recognize both the wish and demand of taxpayers who pay our salaries, who hope and wish that their money be spent in a conservative and responsible manner. Stark County is still undergoing a very slow and painful recovery from the recession. Together then, in our judgment, we are appropriating 2% pay raises and or adjustments for 2013. To clarify, these are not necessarily across the board 2% pay raises for all county employees. The appointing authority in each office determines what actual raises to each employee will be given, subject to the 2% cap addition in funding. And any applicable collective bargaining agreements also in all the variety of offices and departments also will determine what each individual employee will receive in 2013. Page 3 of this handout. This lists the Department 35 county obligations. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this list contains $9.5 million in mandated contractual obligations of our county government. And the largest single item is McJazz at approximately $3.9 million. And you can go down this list, they are in descending order. This funding is not discretionary in any manner, and this funding is a part of the $55.1 million operational funds which we are appropriating in 2013. The bottom half of page 3 contains discretionary appropriations to various organizations which have been traditionally funded by county government. Some organizations supplement safety and other governmental functions, and some provide what we call quality of life services. There's also, and then the capital appropriations also become a part of the Department 35 budget. Again, that Department 35 budget is a total of $11.6 million out of the $55 million budget. In 2013, the appropriation contains, and this is what then is left over after you appropriate all of the funds that I've discussed, $5.56 million in unappropriated funds. This is not surplus. We anticipate appropriating this to a variety of capital needs in 2013 and 2014 for all of the following projects. And that is IT capital projects. And we have a whole host of a number of projects that need to be accomplished to bring our infrastructure and other services up to speed. The county office building, again, MAC is making a detailed list of the needs in the county office building. One of the first things that we intend to address, and we're going to address that relatively quickly, is going to be carpeting where it's needed, a new tile where it's needed, and some other things. I think if you go to the 4th floor, in particular, it's actually, I consider it to be a safety hazard if you try to walk around that hallway on the carpet. It's just outrageous. We have issues, and if you go down into the deepest part of the parking garage, you'll see that we block off certain areas with crime scene tape to keep cars from parking, and that's because the rebarring is rusting out and the concrete is falling, and again, we don't even have an estimate for what that will cost to repair, but these are repairs that have been long overdue, and these are the things that we intend to address. Other buildings have other capital needs. I have the jail roof. The Sheriff Swanson, before Sheriff Meyer, has been complaining for many years about the seriousness of the need for the repairs of that roof and or a new roof. That kind of a capital enterprise is probably in the range of $500,000 just for that roof. That is a huge building. The jail is 50 years old. Again, there is a laundry list of needs to include such things as new locks on jails, windows, just all kinds of basic law enforcement things that are needed in that particular building. The low building roof Even though we're in a new building, and it's a beautiful building, and we are very, very proud of it, there are some issues with water intrusion in that building. Mark Warner made a presentation to the commissioners just this week about that, and we again are waiting for further architectural and expert reviews as to the source of that, but a concern may be that the roof that we thought was going to be good for another 10 years may need to be replaced in a relatively short period of time. The Board of Elections has been asking for many years to move from their present location. We have the Cone Joliet building. We are presently undergoing architectural review to determine the potential for making a move to that building, for the potential costs of that. We are advised by our Board of Elections, though, that again, given the changes in the way people vote and so forth, and early voting and things of that nature, that they're incapable of holding another presidential election in the facility that we presently have. And if you ever walk that facility, it's probably the worst facility owned by county government. So that's a change that's out there, and again, that's probably a ticket with a price tag of probably $500,000, just based upon our experience with the Bow building. Again, that's to renovate the Cone Joliet building to fit their office needs. Drainage continues to be a huge problem in county. I know that's an issue that doesn't affect you and your office operations, but it's one that the commissioners hear about constantly and repeatedly. And for people, and there are many people in Stark County that have just extraordinarily serious drainage problems, and they are county government issues. Probably the overall funding needs for those issues probably are $50 to $75 million plus. But we intend to set aside money beginning this year and into the future for a capital program to deal with those both on immediate term, midterm, and longer term purposes. Another item, retirement payout liabilities. I just received a report today that I think indicates that of all the employees that are presently employed who could retire in the near future, the liabilities are $490,000. That's money that has to be paid, and if it happens 8 years from now and the sales tax isn't in place anymore, that $490,000 comes off the top when you retire. So again, I think it's something that we need to address, and we probably need to set aside that money into a sinking fund of some nature or a reserve in order that's always there and can't be touched for whenever it's needed to pay out. The city of Canton did that in approximately 2002 or 2003, and they had literally $5+ million, I think, in unfunded liabilities, and we've been catching up on that ever since. But it's something that we in government need to do, and we've never done it before. And lastly, we want to set aside money for a rainy day fund. Some portion of this needs to be out there for needs that aren't foreseen otherwise, and they can be used in emergencies and or saved into future years. That's the long and short of this budget. I would ask and offer Commissioner Creighton to your comments. We'll take questions and answers also, but if you would like to do questions and answers first. Commissioner Reagan. Okay, any questions and answers for them on this document, or on any other part of the process or procedure?
Everybody's happy. Is everybody happy?
I just want to say, I wanted to give you everything you wanted, but Tom said no.
We're still trying to teach this young man. I'm going to kind of cover an umbrella. I just need to say a couple things. First of all, thank you for your cooperation through these trying times. It has not been easy for officials and department heads and our employees, so please know that from our heart we say thank you, and please thank your employees. As we've said for the last few years, we are going to change the way that we do business in this county, and I think that you're starting to see that. We couldn't wave the magic wand overnight, but to that end, we have new employees coming on board, new ideas, fresh sets of eyes. I love that. I just want to be clear that Mac's number is 7500, 7500, and I'm going to be real clear. You go through him if you need something done. We're not going to start piecemealing things and things getting out of control. That is the reason why this has been set up and that procedure. Regarding Brant, a lot of you have great ideas for work sessions, ideas that you want to share with us. Go through Brant to set up those work sessions every Monday and Tuesday. We welcome you. We'd love to hear the ideas. We can't do everything, but we have to get them on the radar screen. And just lastly, I just have to do this because did you all notice how cleanly, I mean, it smelled nice in here today and things are starting to clean up. When I came into the room today, I said to Keith, we need to clean up the magazine rack. So I started to go through the little rack, and this is what I found. I found a little missile, I guess you would call it, from December of 1968. So I decided to open it up, Commissioner Bernabei, and the very first thing, is this appropriate for today or not, is practicing what we preach. And the thought of the day is you can preach a better sermon with your life than with your lips. With that, just a little levity, just a little, and that was 45 years ago. That's how long this has been. This building, we haven't owned it 45 years.
Excuse me, am I to take this personally?
You have a red tie on today. Thank you again, thank you.
Richard?
Well, I just want to say thank you to the taxpayers of Stark County. It's certainly a lot easier taking office when a sales tax passes than when it fails. My first term in office, the sales tax failed that year. It was very difficult, and we worked with you, and then our administrator was Steve Singleton, and we got through it. But as we come back out of this, I think that my goals are to the infrastructure of the county, whether that's drainage or whether it's technical services, IT, and things like that get us back on firm footing, because the taxpayers are going to give us an 8-year window, and after 8 years they're going to review what we've done. And I want to show them that we've improved the infrastructure of the county and we are moving the county forward, because I think there's a lot of great things that are going to happen in Stark County and the surrounding areas. So I'm looking forward to it. It's good to be back. You guys have restored credibility to county government. I remember coming here about 5 years ago when they imposed the sales tax, which I told them was a mistake, and then all the things that went through after that. But this board and the new people that are here have really restored the credibility, and I know all of you are part of it. So just I want to say thank you.
Something further? Okay. I think again, before we close, we'll just take a minute of Sheriff George Meyer. I don't know whether everybody's had a chance to meet him yet. Newly appointed as of approximately, 30 days ago.
Good morning, everyone.
But again, he's an important cog in everything. And Judge Kristen Farmer.
Yes.
I don't know if any faces. And again, Judge was appointed, 30 days ago?
60.
60?
Hunter's County.
Any other new faces in the crowd today that you might not know? Okay. Again, we'll bring this to a conclusion. We thank you for your service to Stark County, and thank you for attending today. We are adjourned.